Update. Am I the a-hole for taking my children away from their grandparents after my husband died? Original post. I, 34 female, met my husband while I was doing an exchange semester in Australia when I was 20. We later got married and I moved to Australia permanently. We have 2 kids, 6 female and 4 male, and I'm now 4 months pregnant. My husband passed away 3 months ago. It was and still is horrible. With my husband not being here anymore, I want to move back to my home country. I think it will be good for my kids because the education system over there is heaps better, but the main reason is that I need my family. My 4-year-old doesn't really have an opinion on it, while my 6-year-old is excited because my parents have horses. Here in Australia, my husband's parents look after our kids Monday to Friday as my husband and I both had full-time jobs. So obviously they are close. Mother-in-law and father-in-law are very attached to the kids and love being grandparents. Last weekend, I broke the news to them. I didn't expect them to be happy, but I was hoping they'd understand. They didn't. It was ugly. They asked me how dare I take away their grandchildren after they lost their only son. They said my husband would be disappointed and he would want his children to grow up in Australia. I had to leave because I couldn't handle the situation. I feel guilty because my husband did want to stay in Australia, but mainly because that's where we settled. I don't think he'd be disappointed. I think he'd understand. But I feel so guilty but also angry. I feel like it was cruel of mother-in-law and father-in-law to say what they said. I plan to come back to Australia regularly because I don't want to deprive my children of their heritage, and it has become my home over the years. Basically, is it wrong to move back home? Now for the top comments before reading the update. No a-holes here. These situations just come up when a loved one dies. You need your family and they need theirs. I'm not going to call someone an a-hole for reacting adversely during their grief, and I'm not going to call someone an a-hole for wanting a support system. I completely agree with this. Just a sucky situation. Is there any way the grandparents could move too? If he's their only child, there wouldn't be other children keeping them in Australia. I don't think they can move. They only speak English. Immigration policy won't allow it, and they pretty much live off Centrelink. But they are welcome to visit and will visit too. What is your home country? That's a pretty messed up immigration policy. And people try and say America has a restrictive immigration policy. Switzerland. No a-holes here. Everyone is grieving now and all of you have valid emotions. They lost their son and now they're losing their grandchildren. You lost your husband and now you're alone in a foreign land. Family therapy is definitely needed here, but I don't think anyone is the a-hole. They're not losing their grandchildren. They're going to have a similar relationship to them as Opie's parents have had until now, as long as they come to their senses and apologize for the awful way they chose to treat Opie. Grandparents are not owed any relationship with grandchildren, especially not if they've lost that privilege with the sort of behavior they've displayed. Considering that the grandparents have been watching the children from Monday through Friday every day, to say that they are not owed a relationship is wrong. And legally, it is not true if the grandparents have been such a consistent and stable force in the kids' lives. The mother also doesn't seem overly concerned in how the kids will handle being removed from their grandparents who they see every day. No a-holes here. I hesitate to pass judgments because this is such a rough and hard situation for you as a parent. But I will say this. Please keep in mind that your children have been raised with your husband's parents as a constant fixture in their life. Your kids are too young to grasp what it means to be in Switzerland versus Australia and their grandparents, who have raised them almost as much as their parents, who they have seen nearly every day of their remembered lives, gone. Going from that consistent exposure to seeing them only a few times a year will not be a smooth transition, and you can't assume it will. Just because the 4-year-old doesn't understand what's going on, and the 6-year-old is excited because horses. You have to do what is best for your family. But rest assured your parents-in-law are not being a-holes. Your children will be devastated. There will be an adjustment period and it will not be easy. Now for the update. It's been nearly 3 weeks since my last post. A lot has happened since. First off, we're back home in Switzerland and the kids are okay. As planned, we moved in with my family. The kids are bonding with their grandparents and cousins and the animals. They're set up for therapy, as I am. The events leading up to this, I went back to my in-laws to explain my side of the story. I told them again that we would be coming back, but that right now I need to make sure that I can be a good mom to my kids. They were very understanding and asked if they could take the kids the next day. I agreed and dropped them off. However, pickup didn't go as planned. The kids weren't ready, and father-in-law told me that they decided it would be best for everyone if they stayed with them for a while, as I was clearly unstable. There was screaming, tears, threats, and lots of ugly things were said. I called my lawyer, who told me to call the police. Luckily, it didn't came to that, and they gave me back the kids. But honestly, that was it for me. Trust gone. I booked flights for us and arranged what I could in such a limited time span. I told my in-laws that they had seriously hurt my trust and that I would need time to think what this means for the future. They were allowed to say goodbye to the kids in person. We arrived at home on Monday. The kids already video called my in-laws, as I want to make it as easy as possible for them to transition. I am very hurt and disappointed that it had to end this way, but also hopeful for the future. Right now, I'm enjoying to get pampered by my mom, who's very excited to be part of this pregnancy. In the future, I'll try and rekindle the relationship with my in-laws. Hey, as a fellow Swiss, I'm glad you made it back safely. I'm sorry about how it all played out, but it seems like you made a right choice. Thank you. Speaking as an Australian on welfare, you made a right choice. You now know what their plan was: to try and act as if you were mentally unstable and take your kids from you, possibly sticking you in a psych ward to cement their position. I'd be frank with them and say you don't plan on going back now until you get over their complete betrayal and trying to kidnap your children. That you had thought they were going to make it easy to keep the kids in their lives, but they made sure that is not going to be an easy thing. You're now surrounded by the people you can trust, and I suggest staying there and healing until you feel like you want to go back to Australia. I'm afraid you're right. I just feel bad for my kids. Kids are resilient, and as long as you monitor those calls so the in-laws don't try and manipulate them, you should be good. The kids probably love being in a new wonderful country. Will find it amazing and will be too busy learning the language and trying new things to miss Australia too much. I'm in Sydney, Australia, and with the quarantine only just lifting, it's not much fun here right now. You would have experienced this while still here, so they already had a separation from their friends. This is just extending it. They can still get online and catch up with them. Don't go back. They will try it again. You're probably right, unfortunately. My heart just breaks for the children, as this means they probably won't see their grandparents again. I had a set of grandparents I very rarely saw because it wasn't safe for me to do so. I didn't understand when I was younger, but I do now. My mom always just explained to me in age-appropriate terms. Your children will understand, and if you're comfortable with them having regular video calls, etc., then there's no reason they can't develop a relationship that way. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for making a scene when I found out my sister put my niece up for adoption when she had her son? Plus updates. Original post. My sister had a second child and we were all thrilled for her. She lives a few states over and we haven't seen her this last year. She had one child 2 years ago with her boyfriend and the other one was born last month. Yesterday we had a family Zoom meeting to see the baby and to say hi to my other nibbling. We get on, family starts to load in. Everyone is basically there thrilled to see the baby. We get to meet her new baby boy. After a bit, I asked to see my niece as well. My sister got quiet and very quietly said she doesn't have her. My aunt questioned this, and I was also confused. After a few minutes, my sister said that in the beginning of January, she put her daughter up for a closed adoption because she couldn't care for 2 kids. Everyone lost it. The whole Zoom was a mess. We didn't know. We never got to say goodbye. She didn't have to do this because any of us would have taken my niece. Heck, I could have taken her. I've had multiple miscarriages/fertility issues, and although I am currently pregnant, I am stable, owning a home and have the resources to have taken a toddler, as well as have my baby. Important, my sister has always also said she wanted to be a boy mom. I lost it. I called my sister a narcissistic witch. I asked her when she'd get bored of the new baby and get rid of that one too. I asked her how the heck she could do this without reaching out to family. I know my sister, and I know deep down she just didn't want a daughter. She was depressed when she found out she was having a girl, but thrilled for this entire recent pregnancy. I called her a monster for making children she didn't want to care for, like they were a novelty. I said some other things too. At this point, my grandmother is a complete mess and says her chest hurts, so I stop. My aunt who is with my grandmother goes to help her and turns off the camera. My grandmother ended up having a panic attack that they thought was a heart attack at first. I am so glad she is okay. My sister has since cut off all contact from the entire family. My father is angry with me for blowing up. I was the only one who did, and says that I pushed her away. He said he could have tried to convince her to reverse it, but my verbal lashing completely ruined any chance of getting my niece back. I don't think he understands what a closed adoption means. Also, adoption takes a minute, so for her to have it completed by January makes me feel this process was in place for a while. I don't think there's any chance of seeing my niece again when the mother and father both signed her to be adopted. He's mad at me because now he lost his granddaughter and is afraid he'll never know his grandson. My dad thinks I'm an A for freaking out and nearly giving my grandmother a heart attack. I'm feeling guilty that my grandmother had such an extreme reaction, but I feel that's more because she lost her great-granddaughter. Now for the top comments before reading the updates. Not the a-hole. For a moment, I misread it and thought she put up the newest baby for adoption, which if she was worried about being able to support 2 children, I would have understood. Though with her knowing you are interested in adoption, I would have thought she was a little bit of an A. However, after realizing that instead, she adopted out her 2-year-old, I'm just utterly sickened and stunned. I have memories from being 2 years old, so this is a child who is aware enough to remember her parents and other family. This is a child who loved them unconditionally, who understood what love is. I'm just so sick at the thought of this. Apologies for jumping on the top comment, and I know this is very dark, but I think OP needs to contact the police to check that the girl was in fact legally adopted by a family. I have trouble believing a social worker or any legit agency would allow this without question, /therapy/intervention or even contacting family. My fear is that the sister did this under the table, to people who were not vetted or could be traffickers, or worse, like Kaylee Anthony was supposedly with a babysitter. A closed adoption sounds like a great excuse as to why no one will ever see Denise again and have no way of knowing it, checking up on if she was safe. Also, is the boyfriend okay? Or is it possible he's mistreating her and pushed her to do this? Honestly, that's my fear too. Was this child actually adopted out? Does the boyfriend know? I would also get someone else's verification. Not today, ho. I think this is one of the worst things I've ever seen on Reddit. I just can't get my head around it. OP, I suspect your dad was taking it out on you because you were there and your sister wasn't. Unfair, but your dad is just as blindsided as you are, so hopefully can be forgiven for his extreme reaction. The only comfort I can think to take is that if your sister really didn't love her daughter, hopefully your niece has been placed with a family who will, and will have a better childhood as a result. But I'm so very sorry that wasn't with you. I'm honestly surprised that the authorities allowed a child to be ripped away from its wider family like this. It would be very traumatic. Did she lie and tell them there was no one willing to take the child or stay in its life? And if so, does that have any effect? I would speak to a family lawyer if I was you, even if it confirms that there is nothing that can be done. Unfortunately, no system would be able to intervene in this if the sister's story is correct. There's no authority able to be established by a CPS agency because it sounds like it was done through private adoption, not because of any involvement with the system, which would have offered much more protection for keeping the child placed with the family. Relative rights are unfortunately still pretty minimal, and parents have the right to do this without any family say, outside dependencies at least where practice. I work in the system and have seen some things, but I wholeheartedly agree this is one of the most heartbreaking things I've heard. That poor girl. Edit. OP, I'd encourage you to also contact your local child welfare office no matter if this was done legally. To me, this indicates some possible untreated mental health concerns that she may need to support with to keep the youngest child safe. Even though CPS is stretched thin, I think this is one case that they should check up on and verify that the children, both girl and boy, are safe and okay. I mean, as dark as it is, for all the family knows they could have unalived the girl. Getting assurance that the girl is okay is absolutely within their rights. Maybe not CPS, but if they have the resources, a private investigator, or police even. This is such a wild thing. OP needs to make sure the daughter is safe. Now for the first update. I've contacted local CPS for my sister's area, local courts, and I have a lawyer looking into it for me, starting tomorrow as I just obtain him. Thank you for the helpful comments pointing out the issues with this. Especially thank you to those in social work who reached out to me privately. I didn't realize how many options I had to fight this or see if it was legit. I'll update when I find more out from the lawyer. Lots of people commenting this is fake. I really wish it was. This has been a nightmare. Thank you again to those with helpful suggestions and feedback. Final update. I am pursuing legal custody and due to this I will not be providing any more updates. My lawyer recommended this. The kids come first. But I can say a few things. They found her. The adoption process started a year ago in silence as a private rehoming. It was explained to me that we could fight it as they skipped steps in the process. My sister told them she had no family / the family she does have is harmful. There was mistreatment in our mother's side, but they are long dead now. There's an open investigation into my sister already for her son because of the way she surrendered custody of her daughter. I'm going to temporarily move into an apartment in that area so I am close by in case CPS takes custody of my nephew. It was explained that this was the only way I could actively fight for custody, by being available and close.